Alright, I'm going to be reading a speech by the delegates from Corinth. This speech was given by the delegates of Corinth at a congress. It says the Allied Congress of Sparta. So Corinth was in dispute with Corinthia over Epidemus. And Corinthia had gotten Athens on its side, and Athens had been in a peace treaty with Corinth and with Sparta, I believe, and they had broken that peace treaty by fighting in naval battles with Corinth. Sparta hadn't yet joined, but because of this, Corinth realized that they couldn't do this on their own, even though they did have some allies, and they went to Sparta to get help. And Sparta said, yes, sure, we'll be on your side, but we don't really want to break this truce. We don't want a big war, which, as it would turn out to be, a very big war. But we're on your side. We'll only go to war if necessary. And so now they've decided, Corinth with its allies and Sparta, all allied together, and they've decided, yeah, Athens has really broken the truce. We can't put up with this anymore, and they've all gathered together to vote on whether or not to go to war. So I believe all of the other delegates, or at least most of the other delegates, had already spoken, and then the Corinthian delegates, this is the speech that they gave to convince Sparta and everyone else to vote to go to war. So they say, fellow allies, there is no occasion now for us to make any complaints about the Spartans. They have already voted for war themselves, and they have summoned us here to do the same thing. Indeed, this is what a leader should do, to look after his own interests as everyone else does, but also, in return for all the honor he receives from others, to give a special consideration to the general interest. Now, all those of us who have already had dealings with the Athenians do not need to be told that we have to be on our guard against them, but those who live inland or off the main trade routes ought to recognize the fact that, if they fail to support the maritime powers, they will find it much more difficult to secure an outlet for their exports and to receive in return the goods which are imported to them by sea. They should therefore consider carefully what is being said now, and not regard it as something in which they are not concerned. They must be prepared to see that, if the maritime powers are sacrificed, it will not be long before the danger spreads farther. Until they too are threatened, and that thus this discussion affects them just as much as it affects us. Therefore, they should not shrink from the prospect of choosing war instead of peace. Wise men certainly choose a quiet life, so long as they are not being attacked. But brave men, when an attack is made on them, will reject peace and will go to war, though they will be perfectly ready to come to terms in the course of the war. In fact, they will neither become overconfident because of their success in war, nor, because of the charms and blessings of peace, will they put up with acts of aggression. He who thinks of his own pleasures and shrinks from fighting is very likely, because of his irresolution, to lose those very delights which caused his hesitation, while he who goes too far because of his success in war fails to realize that the confidence in which he goes forward is a hollow thing. Many badly planned enterprises have had the luck to be successful because the enemy has shown an even smaller degree of intelligence, and even more frequently it has happened that what has seemed to be an excellent plan has ended not in victory but in disaster. No one can alike conceive and dare in the same spirit of confidence. We are in perfect security when we make our estimates, but in the test of action, when the element of fear is present, we fall short of our ideal. Now, on this present occasion, it is because we are the victims of aggression and because we have adequate reasons that we are going on to war. And once we have made ourselves secure from the Athenians, we shall at the proper time return to peace. There are many reasons why victory should be ours. First, we are superior in numbers and in military experience. Secondly, one and all together we obey the orders that we receive. As for sea power, in which they are strong, we shall build ours up both from the existing resources of our alliance and also from the funds in Olympia and Delphi. If we borrow money from there, we shall be able to attract the foreign sailors in the Athenian navy by offering higher rates of pay. For the power of Athens rests on mercenaries rather than on her own citizens. We, on the other hand, are less likely to be affected in that way, since our own strength is in men rather than in money. The chances are that, if they once lose a battle at sea, it will be all over with them. And, supposing they do manage to hold out, then that will give us more time in which to improve our own naval tactics, and once our skill is on a level with theirs, there can be little doubt about our superiority so far as courage is concerned. They cannot acquire by education the good qualities that are ours by nature. We, on the other hand, by taking pains, can abolish the advantage they hold over us in point of skill. It will require money to carry out with these projects, and we will contribute money. What an appalling thing to imagine that, while their allies never stop bringing in contribution to maintain their own slavery, we, whose aims are vengeance and survival, should hesitate to incur expense in order to prevent this very money that we are saving from being taken from us by the Athenians and then used to make us suffer. There are also other ways open to us for carrying on the war. We can foster revolts among their allies, and this is the best means of depriving them of the revenues on which their strength depends, or we can build fortified positions in their country, and there will be other ways and means which no one can foresee at present. Since war is certainly not one of those things which follow a fixed pattern, instead it usually makes its own conditions in which one has to adapt oneself to its changing situations. So, when one enters upon a war, one will be all the safer for keeping oneself possession. The side that gets overexcited about it is the most likely side to make mistakes. And here's another point to consider. If this was merely a question of boundary disputes between equals and affecting individual states separately, the situation would not be so serious. As it is, we have Athens to fight, and Athens is so much stronger than any single state in our alliance that she is capable of standing up to all of us together. So unless we go to war with her, not only in full force, but also with every city and every nationality inspired by the same purpose, she will find us divided and will easily subdue us. And let us be sure that defeat, terrible as it may sound, could mean nothing else but total slavery. To the Peloponnese, the very mention of such a possibility is shameful, or that so many cities should suffer the oppression of one. If that were to happen, people would say that either we deserved our sufferings, or that we were putting up with them through cowardice and showing ourselves much inferior to our fathers, for they brought freedom to the whole of Hellas, while we have only failed to safeguard our own freedom, but also while we have not only failed to safeguard our own freedom, but also allowed a dictator state to be set up in Hellas, even though individual states made it a principle to put down deposits. Such a policy, in our view, cannot be held to exempt from three of the greatest mistakes that can be made: lack of intelligence, lack of resolution, or lack of responsibility. Nor do we imagine that you can escape these imputations by claiming that you feel superior to your enemies. This feeling of superiority has done much harm before now. Indeed, from the number of cases where it has proved disastrous, it has come to be known as something quite different, not superiority, but plain stupidity. But there is no need to bring up these complaints from the past, except in so far as they may help us in the present. As for the future, you must look to that by safeguarding what you have now, and by being willing to face sacrifices. It is in your blood to regard all kinds of excellencies as the prizes of toil and sweat, and you ought not to change that way of looking at things, even if you have at the moment some advantages of wealth and in power. For it would be wrong to lose because of plenty what was gained because of abstinence. Instead, we must go forward into this war in the knowledge that we have many reasons for feeling confident. We are acting upon the authority of a God who has himself promised to support us, and all the rest of Hellas will be with us in the struggle, either through fear of slavery or through hope of liberation. It is not you who will be the first to break the treaty, since the God, in ordering us to make this war, regards the treaty as already broken. It is rather a case of enforcing a treaty whose terms have been contravened. What constitutes the breach of a treaty is the first act of aggression, not measures itself in self-defense. From every point of view, therefore, you have good reason to go to war, and this course is what we recommend as being in the interest of all of us, remembering that identity of interest both among cities and among individuals is the surest of all guarantees. Let there be no delay, therefore, in coming to the help of the people of Potadia. They are Dorians and are being besieged by Ionians. A very different state of affairs from what used to happen in the past. Let there be no delay either in claiming liberty for all the rest. It is out of the question to wait any longer, with some of us already suffering from aggression, and the rest of us certain to suffer before long in the same way. It should at once be known that we have met in conference and did not dare to take measures to defend ourselves. No, fellow allies, you must recognize instead that the crucial moment has come, that the advice we give you is the best possible advice, and you must vote for war. Do not be afraid of the terrors of the moment, but set your minds instead on the enduring peace that will follow the war. War gives peace its security, but one is still not safe from danger, for, if the sake of quiet one refuses to fight, as for that dictator city which shall be established in Hellas, let us make up our minds that it is there to dominate all alike and is planning to subdue what has not been subdued already. Let us then go forward against it and destroy it. Let us be able to live our own lives in the future without fear, and let us liberate the Hellenese who are now enslaved. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but in my book, which is actually my dad's from when he was getting his master's, it's pages 103 to 104, and that's book 1, I believe, lines 118 through 125 under the section labeled or titled The Allied Congress at Sparta.